All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes. Okay. Okay. Community. Community is the next one. What does community mean to you? And I think almost everyone's had a chance to contribute to this conversation so far. So whoever would like to jump in, go for it. I see there's a new message on the chat here. What if you're so collaborative that you can't stand hierarchical structures? Yes, Ray. I feel you there.
I'm just like, what if you're like too collaborative?
Yeah.
I can speak to community. I think that community is people who are in some kind of network where they need each other,
Mhm.
and they're like essentially agreeing to um, engage in some kind of mutual aid, which is like meeting each other's needs, supporting each other.
Mhm.
But I think that people get confused about community, and I have a personal thing about this because I've lost community
Mhm.
based on essentially like disagreements.
Mhm.
And I think that people think of community as like people who agree with you or people who have the same ideas about life or God or whatever. It's like, because people have like a religious community, for example,
Mhm.
but it's like, okay, well, what happens if people within that community like stop doing that or like change their beliefs or decide to have a different job and they're not in that community anymore? Then what happens? And it's like,
Mhm.
so for me, the community is more based on what needs are we all fulfilling for each other, and what
Mhm.
agreements do we have.
Yeah.
And I don't think it gets talked about enough, but that's my understanding of what community means.
Mhm. Yeah. Very good. Very good.
And I got another clarified question
Go for it.
because, okay, some of these are outside myself, some of these are inside myself.
Mhm.
And if I'm doing it the way Clea says, with if I think it's easy, um, with inside myself,
Mhm.
those are easy answers. But it's when go outside myself where I have no control,
Yep.
I have a hard time answering these
Mhm.
with a definitive answer.
Mhm. Yep.
So um, I think of community as a group of people that I have chosen to be
Mhm.
my support system, not necessarily, um, they might not even know that they're in it,
Mhm. Mhm.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
That is my community personally. Now, I can do like this group, which is outside myself, and we have chosen all to be together as well.
Mhm.
But which one are we talking about? Are
Mhm.
we talking about chosen groups, or are we or doing my personal community?
Mhm.
Because not everybody gets to my table.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know, that's my question.
Mhm. I would ask also too, Amy, which one would you choose? Which one do you want to choose?
I would choose my personal over any group
Mhm.
because it's my personal, because I know from past experience, the only thing I can change is myself,
Right. Mhm.
period. So that's how I contribute to my society, my community, my
Mhm.
support system.
Okay.
So with that being said, I would be a thumbs up because of
Okay.
that. Does
Mhm.
that make sense?
Yep.
But if you're talking outside of myself, I'm always going to be a maybe because I have no clue
Yeah. Yeah.
for definitive.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're kind of hitting on here. That's what we're kind of discovering is, how do we make the process more internal? Because that was the invitation at the beginning. Instead of,
Right.
projecting the judgment out on others, we're taking evaluation of ourselves. So,
Okay.
so yeah, so, in accordance with that invitation, that seems like that's what we're working towards is how do we bring it internal. And Beth, you had your hand up.
I did have my hand up.
Mhm.
Uh, I think there's a lot of ways you can go with community. For me as a pastor, I have my faith community. They're my congregation. We are the body of Christ together, and we are all in ministry together. One body, many parts, that kind of thing. But then I've got my outside of my congregation community, which I have to have because I cannot depend on my faith community to be my emotional support system. So I have my community of friends who almost all of them are neighbors in my neighborhood who live in my complex. We go out to dinner together. We text each other and chat, and they're people that I don't have to be a pastor around, which is nice. But then like I go line dancing and there's certain people I'm making friends there and I only see them at line dancing. So they're my line dancing community. So, and then there's the part I struggle with a little tiny bit more, which is going out into my community, the neighborhoods around me to see, where can I be helpful, which is what you and I have been talking about. And I'm still working on it and it's going okay. So for me, there's several different levels of community. And I think I'm doing pretty well with most of it, but I could do better. I could do a little better. I would still give myself a thumbs up for the most part, but I could still do a little better.
Yeah.
That's so anyway, I don't know if that helps anybody, but just wanted to weigh in.
Yeah, and there's different layers and there's different environments as well too, because there are some environments where ideology is more important than values, where it's more important than the way you treat others, and that's where I would struggle with those kinds of communities. For instance, a lot of the work I do is looking at what are the values and what are the structures of business and market, which is privatized. So there is encouragement to keep secrets and to keep things, under wraps. There's the state or the government, which is about centralized power. So they're trying to steer people towards a specific ideology or to convince others that an ideology is the right one or correct. And then there's the commons, which is the root of community, which is about decentralized, sharing the power. And that goes back to what Ray was saying about, what do we depend on each other for? And my stance with that is how do we go from a codependent community to an interdependent community where we're complementing each other's strengths instead of exploiting each other's weaknesses. So that's what comes up for me around community personally. And I feel what you're saying too, Amy. It's like in certain communities outside of myself, yes, I see that struggle, and I'm kind of aligned with that when we get back to what the values are, what are the shared values, talking explicitly about the values. I feel like, yeah, I'm more of a 3, but when I start getting into, especially with men, with other men, where ideology, there's always debates over ideology. I'm a solid 2 there, So it's kind of like, okay, do we want to look at what is really the struggle, or do we just want to look at what is easy and what is the flow? And that's personally, that's a personal choice. And yeah. So yeah, that's what comes up for me around community. Yes, Amy, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So wouldn't it change your data if we don't have the same perimeters all the way across? I mean, if we're collecting data for this social experiment, or I don't know what we're doing really, but the social experiment, if we're not all on the same page, if we're not all grading the same thing, wouldn't that skew the data and the results?
Not really. Not really, because I think the more we're honest about making the decision or struggling with what to perceive with this, I think that makes the data more honest and more relevant, because when this is all compiled and we're seeing, which values are floating to the top and which values are floating down, it really kind of puts a laser towards, where do we have to focus in order to really align, to really be honest with each other. So yeah, so I'm not worried about it skewing, because the moment the data is generated and we're observing it and we're talking about it, it's going to change, because the nature of the relationship is going to change too. Yeah, so also, Amy, to kind of further reflect and to provide deeper honesty, coming into this conversation, I was a 3. But now that we're talking about the different, the different areas where community exists, outside of ourselves, I'm bringing myself back to a 2 now on that one. So it all averages out.
Willingness
All right,
is,
yeah, go ahead.
I said my willingness is like a 1, right? But if you're putting all of it in a whole pile, I think it would be more fair if I was a 2.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
definitely. Yeah. All right, so community. Do you find it easy to be in a community? Is it a struggle or is it a real struggle? Okay, so 3, 6, 6, 9. Okay, great, thanks. Got it. Okay. Creativity. Creativity. What comes up for you around creativity? For me, fun and play, and creating environments where it's playful is what comes up for me around creativity.
I guess I'll say what creativity is, if you would
Sure.
like.
Sure.
When I look at creativity, it's manifesting a thought process into the physical reality.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter whatever it is, either through non-physical, but anything
Mm-hmm.
can be creative, with hopefully some joy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it really, creative, you can be creative and still have a lot of pain involved in it as well. So, for me, it's more of like I'm bringing something new that's only done in my way, my unique way, into the physical.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I see it.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else want to add to creativity? What does it mean to you? Okay. All right.
I
Go
can
ahead.
add, as a fellow theater person,
Uh-huh.
creativity can be joyful and playful, but it can also be an outlet for lament and grief. I read the Psalms. A lot of them are praiseworthy of God, and a lot of others are lamenting, God, where are you? That kind of thing. And like in the theater or movies, you can touch on a lot of subjects
Mm-hmm.
through creativity. I was just watching highlights from what was I? I was watching highlights from like musicals or whatever. Hard dance routines. Somebody compiles all these crazy things, and I like to watch them. And one of them was from the musical Jagged Little Pill, the Alanis Morissette musical, and I'd never heard of the song, but it was called Uninvited, and it was a tale told in dance of a woman's struggle with addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Really interesting, but it's a very painful number to go through. But so anyway, so it can have both.
Mm-hmm.
The whole range of emotions can be displayed through creativity,
Mm-hmm.
through dance, movies, art, theater, songs, whatever, writing. So yeah, it's a pretty wide range.
Yeah. Yeah. I look to creativity for catharsis as well. Yeah.
It's a great way to show our humanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things based on the conversation last month, with that I was listening in with you, Becky, was creating opportunities to share more art and to just provide more dialogue and more conversation around what it means to be an artist, what it is to make music, what it is to make visual art, what it is to to be in theater and to do drama and acting as well. Anyone else want to add to the creativity conversation? Okay, so creativity, easy for you, struggle, or a hard struggle? All right. All right. Finding that's the first one with the top score so far. All right. Cultural sensitivity. So this came up. This came up in several conversations over the last couple weeks that we had between our possibility conversation and this conversation. But I'd like to open it up. What comes up? What comes up for you around cultural sensitivity? Ray and I were discussing this online briefly yesterday.
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in. I switched over to my Bluetooth headphones, so I don't. Can you still hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I think after talking about awareness, I'm kind of connecting these two, because to me, cultural sensitivity has to do with being aware of other people's cultural backgrounds and also like not making assumptions about their cultural background.
Yes.
And so there's like a certain level of I think we've all been in situations where we can say somebody was culturally insensitive. But it's a little harder to pin down like what it means to be culturally sensitive. And um I think it's that part of you that says like maybe I shouldn't ask that question. Like maybe I should just listen. Maybe I should, like this sort of like let me pause and reflect before I say something that I might want to take back or so just it's sort of an awareness and a when I hear the word sensitivity, it's like kind of um being aware of like subtle things that are that might be sensitive to somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else want to add on? Make an observation or I'll be honest, I struggle with it because those triggers, those triggers for a lot of people are really deep rooted, and something that might be said that seems relatively benign, can trigger, and uh, quite frankly, I'm very I'm very concerned about it. I'm very, I admit sometimes I do feel like I walk on eggshells, and yeah, so it's a struggle for me. I'm not going to say it's a strong struggle because we're having this conversation, but it's a struggle for me. Um, on online, I mentioned about kind of my Jewish background, and some of the conversations that we've had offline here have been around the Jewish culture and some of the triggers around that, and for me, that's very deep rooted, and my family has shown contempt for the Jewish culture, but also pride for the Jewish culture because there is a heritage there. So yeah, so to walk that fine line and and not knowing what somebody's personal experiences are, it's sensitive. It's very sensitive. I can be open about that sensitivity, but I can't guarantee that I'm going to set off a trigger just from being honest or authentic or transparent. Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
Okay, so everybody knows the situation. So, or if you don't, Um, so the only thing I struggle with is not realizing I'm ignorant to some of the stereotypes, where the language comes from. Um, and if it was socially okay in my own world that I was not aware, because my environment is bigotry. They're bigots. They're people that I've worked really hard not to be. Well, never mind.
Yeah, Amy, I've struggled with it too. I've struggled with it too because as I've well, I'm just gonna say it. My great grandmother's father was Orthodox Jew. He walked out on the family when my great grandmother was 7 years old, and what happened there were like 3 generations of bigotry passed down because of that incident. And that for me was a I mean, I really just learned about this recently and kind of unpacking that and now really understanding the deep roots of that. Kylie, please, you have your hand up.
Um, so cultural sensitivity is an interesting thing, especially for me, like as a person of color. Um, and there's something like I feel like I have to say just because of things that have happened and things that have gone on that for me personally is like a big thing, which is um, I need there to be a really clear distinction between cultural sensitivity and racial sensitivity because it's a very, 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 very different thing and it's a very different issue.
Mhm.
And cultural sensitivity, one of the big things, right, is respecting people for the culture and the way that they choose to live and, the significance of, the things that are associated with that culture
Mhm.
versus the distinction with racial sensitivity, which is being careful not to disrespect or attack or insult or demean or somebody for something that they have no control over.
Yes. Mhm.
Which for me is like a very big deal because I've heard things placed as racial sensitivity that are not racial
Mhm.
sensitivity. And as
Okay.
someone who has experienced, you know, discontent because of something I have no control over, the color of my skin
Mhm.
or my gender. Like, you know, but in that with cultural sensitivity, for me personally, when I look at it, it's understanding that if it is not something that you personally have learned the history of, the significance of, the symbolism of, that you haven't researched, you don't study, that you don't necessarily know,
Mhm.
it is wisest to just sort of not comment. Or if you're going to say anything, be curious, ask curious questions, ask for information, you
Yes.
know? Um, and I just want to speak to Amy's point, which is you grow up in certain cultures and environments where certain things are normal. So, like, for example, my grandfather is white. They adopted my mother. She is half black, half native, with a little bit of white in there. And my grandfather was probably one of the most ignorant people you could come across until he was confronted with.
Mm.
So, like, before I was born, he wanted nothing to do with people of color. And
Mm.
like they kind of erased the fact that my mother had native and black heritage, like went out of their way to make sure no one knew about that.
Mhm.
And then when my mom got pregnant with me, he was furious and he wanted absolutely nothing to do with me. He couldn't believe she was going to have this baby. He was like disgusted. Then I was born and I was his favorite person till the day he died.
Mhm.
Like, and nobody could tell him anything ever again about a person of color. And so, in that respect, I think there are situations and places where you are raised or you are surrounded in an environment where you don't have that awareness or you don't have that opportunity for awareness until much later on. And what's most important is what you do after you're made aware.
because we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to do those things where we say something that we shouldn't have or we didn't realize was offensive or insulting. What's most important is how you respond when that happens. And so like with cultural sensitivity, it's like you can say something that you didn't mean to. And then if that person responds in a specific way, the most important thing is taking ownership for, oh, I shouldn't have said this thing. And then taking accountability for like, hey, I see that it has caused this in you. That was not my intention. I am so sorry. You know, how can I fix it? What do you need from me? I definitely won't do it again. Thank you for educating me. And I think the same goes for like doing something culturally insensitive. Like if you're wearing something that, you know, is a culturally sacred garment and you have no, you know, if someone educates you on that, then you know, that's like for me personally, how I look at it and how I sort of try to walk through it in the world.
Thank you, Kylia. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add another one is racial sensitivity. So let's first start with cultural sensitivity based on this conversation. Something that comes easy for you, something that is something you're working on, something you're really still working on. Okay, let me get these down here. Okay, cool. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And Kylia, what's yours again? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so then as opposed to racial sensitivity, does it come easy for you? I'm gonna say I want to work hard on it. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, thank you. Right. Okay. Anything else to add before we move on to the next one? Thank you. Thank you for that, everybody. Thank you. All right. Curiosity. Curiosity. For me, what curiosity is like you said, Kylie, you know, being able to ask questions, asking clarifying questions. One of the one of the major tenets of Winfinity is a commitment to ongoing inquiry. So that's what curiosity means to me, and I'm pretty. I consider myself pretty curious. Anyone else want to speak to curiosity?
I think for me, it is asking questions with no expected outcome or not trying to get like validation for what you think in your head and
Ooh,
coming from a place of like no judgment
uh-huh.
and no like hostility.
Yeah. No judgment is hard for me. Yes. Mhm. Okay. Anything else about curiosity that you'd like to add? If you weren't tired before, you're all looking really tired now. No, this is a workout though, but thank you guys for hanging in there. All right, curiosity, easy, something that is hard work or something that's really hard work. 8, 2, 5, 8, 8, 11, 12, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19. Great, thank you. All right. Empathy. Empathy. Okay, hopefully we can
Empathy.
go ahead, Beth.
Empathy to me is being able to relate to someone else's feelings.
Mhm.
I find that it's easiest to do that when you've actually felt the same feelings as someone else. Um, I can say that for quite some time, I didn't have any empathy. And frankly, neither did my now ex-husband. He still doesn't, I don't think. Not sensitive to other people's feelings, not aware. There goes awareness again, not aware of what other people are feeling or where they might be coming from. Seminary helped me to develop empathy. And as an example, I took a class called Church and Social Change, which was focused on mass incarceration. And I am ashamed to say how ignorant I was on the whole thing. I was horrified. But it was a great class, and I learned a tremendous amount. But I was horrified by my ignorance and my own lack of empathy. So I've had to learn it. I think you can learn it, and I'm better than I was. But you know, I'm a little iffy as to whether or not I should give myself a thumbs up or a, you know, but I'm a lot better than I once was, I think. So being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, I think that's empathy, as opposed to sympathy, which is feel sorry for someone.
Right. Michelle.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to follow up on what Beth was saying. I think that empathy does require you to have some level of understanding of the experience that someone else is having or has had. I think that experientially, if you haven't walked in their shoes, it's going to be a difficult thing to achieve. So for me, what I focus on is being able to hold compassion, the ability to feel that compassion for someone, whether or not I have actually walked in your shoes and experienced the same thing. I do agree with something Beth said, that if you don't have that experiential wisdom as a platform for understanding really the depth of whatever it is they're feeling or potentially going through, it's a place where you know would say to somebody, I'd like to understand what you're feeling, but the reality that you're going to, if you don't have that experiential baseline, it's going to be challenging to actually get into that word 100%. So for me, I always focus on whatever the situation is, definitely being able to be compassionate, which doesn't require that experiential similar baseline or platform, to me, that is, for me.
Michelle, if I may add, I agree with you 100%. And as a pastor, if someone is speaking to me and I have not been in their situation, really the most I can do is listen, and allow them to be seen and heard, and to offer compassion. So I absolutely agree with you. If I can't be empathetic, I can at least be compassionate.
So empathy, easy for you? Still want to work on it, or still have a lot of hard work on it? I'm gonna give myself a low 3. A low 3.
How do I give myself a low number with the emojis?
Oh, that's okay. You can just do
Maybe that's, oh, is that what that is?
that's a still working on it.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll do a 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. Okay, 20. Great. All right. All right. So we're a little more than halfway through, and time's going by fast. We only have about half an hour, 45 minutes left here. So I'm going to start with the vote first, and we'll see who wants to speak to the value. Engagement. Engagement. 3, 5, 8, 15. For Becky and Kylia. 13, 14, 15. Okay, Becky, where are you on engagement?
I can't find the down, but I would
50. Okay, yeah, that's great. Okay, so who would like to speak to that engagement? For those of you who said 2 or so or no. Becky, since you were trying to find that no button, let's talk about engagement.
Okay. Like, should I define what it means to me? I mean,
Just what comes up for you around it when you heard it.
I was just thinking about like speaking up in class or in a group kind of thing, like engaging, or sometimes I'd rather observe things than participate with like games and things like that. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The reason why I was a 2 on that one was because I want to I want to pull you into these conversations, but I also want to respect your right to observe as well, or your inclination to observe. So that's why I was a 2 on that one. Because I sometimes disengage too. All right. Next one is inclusivity. Inclusivity. This one is something that I is one of my personal core values. So, all right. Becky, inclusiveness or inclusivity. So I think that's a 3 from everyone. I'm just waiting for Becky to weigh in on that one.
none of them are working for me. Thumb up.
Okay, great. Awesome. All right. And now the main event, integrity. Integrity. Are you in integrity? And I'll say something about this when I get all the votes here. Okay, so Amy's at a 2. Ray, integrity.
So are we not defining what these are now?
Well, what we're doing is we're going to speak to it after the vote. Oh, you're frozen. Okay, great. All right. Amy, so since you had the 2, you had the not quite sure. I'd like to hear what you have to say on that one.
I am going to pass
You're going to pass? Okay.
on that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll speak to it. What integrity means to me is talking about values and holding those in kind of like a higher standard than ideas or actions or anything like that. That's what integrity means to me, is having these conversations around values. So that's why I felt inclined to say 3.